Call the meeting to order. Begin with a roll call vote. Trustee Ron Wilson.
Present.
Trustee Hartley McIntosh.
Here.
Trustee Neil Gaynor. We have Mr. Cucci for Ron Cucci. Nice to see you, Ron. Trustee Kyle Mays.
Here.
Trustee Jan Price. I understand Trustee Stanley is en route. He'll be here shortly. Trustee David Smith.
Here.
Trustee Hugh Connett.
Here.
Trustee Bob Lux is here. Trustee Paul Martin.
Here.
Very good. Thank you. We have an agenda. Okay. Invocation and pledges of allegiance, please, to begin. Heavenly Father, we come to you today as an assembled body. We humbly request that you bless our meeting, our community, and our nation. Help us to work diligently, always for the common good and in the best interest of those who we have been elected to represent. Guide us to be insightful and prudent in our intentions, visions, plans, deliberations, decisions, and their fulfillment. Work through us to provide a spirit of welcome to all in attendance, to engage in respectful and thoughtful dialogue and discussion with understanding, wisdom, and humility. Amen. If you wish, prior to reciting the pledges, you may take a moment of quiet reflection in the manner of your preference. Thank you. Pledge to the flags. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pledge to the Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to Texas, one state under God, one indivisible.
Thank you. We are to agenda item number 3, and that is receive comments from the public. We have in attendance, start with our new township director, Mrs. Ann Snyder. Nice to see you, Mrs. Ann Snyder.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to address your board tonight. As President Lux said, my name is Ann Snyder, and I was recently elected as chair of the Woodlands Township Board of Directors, of which I'm very, very honored. But I'm here twofold. One, as board chair, as well as personally to say that I value and very much the relationship between the MUDs and the township. And we look forward to working together. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Sue Ellen Myers, please.
Oh, well, Myers, thank you for letting me talk tonight. I'm from Mud 47 and have lived in the Woodlands for like over 30 years. About the past 4 years, I've been attending in person and on Zoom the Lone Star board meetings and have really kind of got to know them and kind of reached the conclusion that they could really use some alternate views on the board. So with that in mind, I really worked hard to get John Yours elected. I even baked 30 loaves of bread to sell to raise money for him. So I was really in this, and I stood out in the rain and handed stuff out. So I'm really confused about what's happened with this letter that he got and it seems there's this obscure law that is prohibiting him, but watching the board meeting last night, they appointed John Preble, whose term, he represented precinct 4, and his term expired December 1st of this year, and they appointed him to the board. So, and I'm thinking, well, this was kind of like a technicality for John. Couldn't they just appoint John? They really wanted to. So I feel powerless in this. And I'm coming to ask you guys, you're my representative. You have some power. Could you take some action and at least investigate? Is there any room to negotiate in this? Can we give a response to this? He won this election by 51% of the vote. If we just let it fly, we've got no representation on that board. So I really appreciate you discussing it, deliberating it, see what we could do. If there's anything, thanks.
Thank you, Sue Ellen. Sue Ellen, I'll be happy to call you. We can talk about it. Mr. Paul Brown, please.
My name is Paul Brown. I'm a resident for 30 years and director of 147. Regarding the Lone Star election, why was the elected candidate disqualified? I think that's something that this board needs to address along with the 10 freaking muds here. Okay. Allowing another board to arbitrarily, perhaps, make a judgment and use something obscure to disenfranchise thousands of our residents who voted for this gentleman. Mr. Lord, I think it's over the top. We need to challenge it. As a community, this board needs to challenge the people who believe things differently than we believe. We need to do it aggressively. We need to start to get aggressive, including our 10 months. Where are the copies of the application provided by the district election clerk, who checked, I presume, because that's their job, checked the documentation before the election and certification? Okay, where are those documents? Do we have copies of those? Have we gotten off our backs and perhaps intervened with some assistance for yours in, contending this decision? And I think these boards need to do that. I mean, we're talking 50 people here. We're talking one of the biggest communities, biggest board users in the community, in the county. And then who checked all the documentation before the election and certification of him as a candidate? I know because I'm in my 3rd term. I know when I run for election, I fill out paperwork, and our clerk, okay, who was appointed for the election, job is to check all that documentation. Now, well after the election, people are contending that something didn't get checked. Okay? It should have been called out right up front if it is a requirement. And so what are we doing about that? And then I'd like to know, if we could have an item on the agenda for next month's meetings, okay, both the MUD meetings and this board's meeting, okay, to give us your findings as to what really happened here. As Sue Ellen Myers mentioned, as far as the community is concerned, they voted for the guy. He was a legitimate candidate. He was put up as a legitimate candidate by Lone Star. Okay? And he won. So I think we need to do something, folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Arthur Bradehoff. Good evening, Arthur.
Thank the board for the time. I'm here as a taxpayer, at least on one issue, and the issue is about this election. Right? 28,000 people voted in this particular race. 14,000 voted for John Ewers, and he won 51%. There's a lot of questions to this, and take a look at what's going on nationally. People feeling disenfranchised. This community's been disenfranchised, and this issue needs to be raised at the state level, at the county level. There needs to be an investigation on what took place. He either was a qualified candidate, and if he wasn't qualified, should have been disqualified in the beginning. And where was this law on his packet to know, or any one of us that would run to know these are the qualifications we must meet in order for our application to be qualified and be placed on the ballot? If it can happen in a Lone Star election, you don't think it can happen in another position? This is something that's real serious for not only this community, but for the county overall. And we need to take this forward and get some kind of relief at the state level. Now, if the state says he was disqualified, why is not the second candidate that ran, that got 48% of the vote, the candidate to represent us in the Woodlands, whether you like that person or not? These guys took someone else that doesn't even probably live in the Woodlands and put them in there. So it's something we really need to look at. Number two, I'll put on my mud director's hat. I'm really looking forward to 23 because I'm really looking forward to the discussion and the outcome of whether we put on the water bill an infrastructure surcharge to start to accumulate money for infrastructure. It's the right thing to do for this community. It's looking forward. So I look forward to that discussion at a mud level and at the trustee level. And to summarize, I'd like to thank all the members on this board for your service to the community, your dedication, and wish all of you and your families a Merry Christmas and a stellar New Year. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Excellent. We're now to the consent agenda. Review and act upon the minutes of the board meeting, November 2022. Review and act upon the financial reports, November 2022. I have one comment. I believe that the minutes that were submitted should reflect that it is at the heading, the Board of Trustees regular meeting minutes 9 November 2022, not October 12, 2022. Is there further discussion regarding any of these, either the minutes or the financials? Goes from pages 1 through 13 of our meeting packets.
Move to accept the consent agenda.
As amended.
As amended.
Second, please. Second, Hugh Connett. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. Thank you. And with one abstention. Okay. Regular agenda item number 6, receive the regular monthly SJRA Woodlands Division report. Is that Mr. Meeks? Good evening, Chris.
Do not have anything to cover on the monthly operations report. I just wanted to step up here and see if you had any questions on it before I just dismiss. All pretty much standard stuff, but don't have any questions. I'll turn it over to Dan, who will cover the strategic.
Good evening, Mr. Hildebrand.
Good evening, everybody. Got a real brief update tonight. Yesterday, we had our 6th stakeholder meeting for the wastewater strategic plan. I think it was very successful. A lot of good discussion. We don't have a meeting summary put together yet for that. I also know most of y'all don't have MUD meetings here in December. But once we get those documents together, they will be immediately put up on the Google Drives. And if y'all want a notification for that, to go look at them We can do that because we do have an upcoming January 4th, all MUD director meeting, give a whole recap from the beginning to where we are today, just in, where we are today regarding the wastewater strategic plan. One of the big, kind of milestones coming out of discussion yesterday was we are down to 2 options. One being just more of a renewal replacement phase option to the MBR technology. The second being build a new wastewater treatment facility now to replace plant 1, approximately 2020.
The time and location on that Jan 4 meeting?
So it is at 5:30, 5:30 to 7:30, I believe. And that is going to be at our wastewater treatment facility, number 1, the conference room, the
Training room?
training room.
That's page 23.
Yeah, it should be, and I think Shelley, I think you sent out some notices regarding that too. We are asking for y'all to RSVP for that, just so we have food for a great number of people. If Paul, Ron, or Hugh, did you want to add anything from discussion yesterday or?
Well, as a kind of first time attendee, I thought I learned a lot, certainly. And I think the decision to carry the 2 alternatives forward made a lot of sense based on what decision criteria the group's going to try to use to then decide on how to make that decision. I think that was there's a bit of a diversity in that thought of how you're going to use the criteria and what should the criteria be. A lot of discussion around that. So I think you've done a lot of work. Obviously, eliminating options is almost as powerful as selecting one, right? So yeah, it was a very, I thought, very well, 4 hours of really good discussion.
I do want to reiterate too that, we are working towards making a decision on path forward here. We want to make enough touch points with all the MUD directors, make sure this is not feeling a rushed decision. So we have that January 4th all MUD director meeting. We have a January 10th final stakeholder meeting. We have the January individual MUDs meetings and the trustees meeting to further discuss, working up towards a trustee vote on path forward at the March trustees meeting. So if there's ever a concern on the timing and path forward and schedule, we'd be happy to discuss with you, but that's the current layout.
And just an observation, we went into this study at least 12 months ago with one thought in mind to kick this off, and that was to consolidate Plant 2. And because of the rigorous work that has been done, I think we've arrived at a much better option between the 2 remaining options. So I thought the process was valuable and costly, time consuming, but valuable. And it's well worth the investment based upon the volume of dollars that will have to be expended.
So based on the level of effort, we can do this next phase in 3 or 4 months. At least.
I think one other piece I will add is what we presented at the stakeholder meeting yesterday and what will be available to all MUD directors is a couple charts and tables that actually start defining the cost to the end user and the resident and breaking that down to the increase on an average monthly bill over the 50-year planning horizon. So I know a lot of people have been looking for that, and we have those revised numbers now to make available for further discussion at the January 4th meeting too.
And can you also convert the wastewater capital requirements to that same format? So we can see what the total capital bill is, freshwater and wastewater. Maybe I do that meeting, but I'd like to have an understanding of this 200 million for the wastewater, for the freshwater. And that's another, whatever the number's going to be for wastewater. I think, at least I think in terms of, pennies per 1,000 gallons. And I think it'd be good for us to understand that effect. I don't really, think in terms of average bill. But I do understand the pennies per 1,000 gallons.
I can just add something on the water system side, the 200 million for the water system. We're looking to discuss that further in March when we present the project plan. We've had an initial discussion with the review committee, I'm sorry, two committees, with the audit committee. But we have more follow-up with them in February and then in March with this board here, showing exactly what you're talking about.
So that March time period is probably when you're gonna really get both those together in the full picture.
So Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't one of the views you showed was kind of a typical 6,000 gallon per month bill, as it were? That was the view of this incremental dollars, right? Is that what you're talking about, David? I mean,
No, I understand, sometimes we get data presented by the average bill. But what I'm talking about is we have a water rate of, what is it, $3 or $4 per 10 with right
Not
now.
the cost per 1,000 gallons.
Cost per
not the cost
1,000.
per either 10,000 or 6,000.
What we're billing is cost per 1,000. And I'd like to see this,
Essentially, the data is there.
the data's there. I know the data's there. It's just that,
It's just running by.
if we're gonna sit there and say the water bill, the cost per 1,000 is going up $3. I think we all need to understand that. I don't know what it's gonna be. It's, you really have to look at the debt, right? And the cost of the debt and how that affects your money.
We have the data.
Yeah.
We can show it both ways.
Yeah,
That way, if you
yeah.
want to see it, just the incremental cost or the collective average bill. Yes.
Any other questions at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Hilbrand. Update on infrastructure funding, Mr. Shackelford?
To our knowledge, Congress does not address the issue, so it's still pending. The words that, the messages we're getting basically are probably first part of next year before Congress will decide. Infrastructure funding. We'll keep you both.
I wanna, whether it's a positive note or a negative note, McCarthy, Ron McCarthy does not have his plan to eliminate earmarks. And I suspect this is an earmark.
Well, they quit using that. They're now calling it community project funding.
Yeah.
So,
Earmark.
so that's still on the horizon for a decision.
Thank you, Mr. Shackelford. Agenda item number 7, receive updates on the Spring Creek detention study. Mr. Hilbrand? Boy, they're fighting to get up on this one. This is a good one.
Giving some space.
Yeah, no, again, just real brief, some of y'all may recall, we had a funding partners meeting back in middle of November. The direction that we received from the partners out of that meeting was to further look at optimizing the 2 dams in terms of size, location, what the benefit cost ratios would be coming out of that, while also identifying who and how we would communicate with further stakeholders, development companies, Rice University, et cetera. So that is what we're currently working on. Our consultant's working on is the optimization piece. We do not have a December meeting. January meeting is where we come back to the funding partners, present those optimized results of the detention basin. And then we will be asking the funding partners, how do you want us to take this forward again? So that's where we are currently at. Any questions?
No questions? Thank you, Dan. Okay. Agenda item number 8, receive the attorney's report. Good evening.
To discuss with y'all, you'll see on the Google Drive, there's a memo for all next round of bud meetings regarding Senate Bill 3 and the implementation of the PUC's rules for that legislation. We talked about the bill back when it was passed following the 21 legislative session. It had to do with response to Winter Storm Uri. And for our world, none of our districts, including one of the Woodlands districts, disconnected service or imposed penalties for bills that were due during Winter Storm Uri. But there were some around the state that did, and so the state legislature responded to that.
And part of what SB 3 did was required that public water suppliers not disconnect water during an event, and extreme weather events defined as a period of time where the temperature doesn't exceed 28 degrees for the previous 24 hours and isn't projected to exceed 28 degrees as the high following 24 hours or longer. So we talked about that. You know, the legislature also tasked the PUC with adopting to implement the statute, which they have now done. And part of the PUC's rules require that a notice be sent out by the end of January of this year. So we've worked with different operating consultants and have also provided a copy of the notice to Jim and staff to go ahead and get that out in our next bill stuffer, so that we don't have to do a separate mail out for that. That's what we're doing for our other district clients. And we'll get that out here probably later this month.
It'll go out June, early January. We'll do an e-blast.
The districts do have a lot of discretion in terms of payment plans, so we don't turn them off. We don't include late fees. Also, folks have hardships, financial hardships as a result of an extreme weather event. They can petition a district for relief for 30 days at the end of that event. The district has each FUD has a lot of discretion on the terms of that payment plan, but it does have to be offered if it's requested. And then there's parameters for that. So hopefully we won't have another one of these for another several years. Next Christmas is going to be pretty cold, but who knows? That's all I have. The attorney's report. Happy to answer questions if y'all have any. Yes, sir.
I was hoping Ted would be here, but month 39, just annexing the section across 2978.
That's
I
correct.
was trying to watch a video, but the video failed. But I was wondering if we could get a legal opinion. I was really surprised you could assign a different tax rate to different, customers. But can you get a legal opinion of that? That's the first time I've heard that.
So there is a provision under Texas law on the water code that allows for what's called a defined area. It's been around for a long time. It just doesn't historically hasn't been utilized very much. Previously, you had to have at least 2,000 acres for a district to be able to have what was called a defined area. Basically, what that means is you have a geographic area within an overarching district where you need infrastructure to be put in place for that area. And instead of the entire large 2,000 acre district, which now the legislature changed maybe 2 sessions back to 1,000 acres. And if you create one of these defined areas, it has its own bonding authorization for just that area. And the infrastructure that is purchased in that area is only, if the taxes to pay the debt service on that are only paid by the taxpayers in that defined area. So MUD 39, once they annexed the property that they annexed last month, they have over 1,000 acres. And so under the new rules, they're able to do that. Actually, 386 did a defined area of fluids last year. So they already have one in Creekside. So that's the questions. Yeah, very much.
General Manager's report.
Just a couple of things to report. I did attend the Grogan's Point Resident Association meeting on December the 8th. Ed was supposed to, but he tested positive for COVID, so I went solo. But anyway, spoke to them about the recent newspaper stories and TV stories about subsidence, the U of H report. Talked to them about the Spring Creek study, which could help things for them if we can zero in on an improvement plan there. And I think it was well received. The other thing, MUD 46 director Fred Letterman had run across an article in US News that I told him that I would pass out at the trustee meeting that talks about water shortages in Arizona, I think, and he had some interest in that article. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, sir.
Did we ever decide on the folks who's coming in, fees for the critics?
The topic of merchant fees, yeah, it is on pause right now. I think the committee, the ad hoc committee, that President Lux appointed to look at that, but they wanted to take it up after January 1.
Thank you. And now we have a very nice agenda item, receive WWA staff report on collaboration with the Woodlands Township Environmental Services Department. And I see at your discretion, you're going to delegate that to Mr. Gaynor. And we have, I hope everybody knows Terry MacArthur, who is with the Township Environmental Services Department, a good longstanding friend of the WWA and our community in general.
I'm surprised when I run into somebody that doesn't know Terry. Of course, in our community has been for a long time at the township. And we have a very a shared mission. Water conservation, education, water education for our community. We've had a long working relationship. Before Terry was in that position, and as a dedicated water conservation education specialist for the township, with Bob Bailey at one point. And so that position goes back a ways. Terry's been in it for a long time. We're very closely and very fruitfully on supporting each other's messages. Digital, in person. WWA is a frequent presenter at seminars, special events, workshops. We've actually got one in the works for January that we're going to be hosting here in this facility. And with an eye towards doing more shared seminars and workshops out of this facility as well in the future. We can work that out. We've been a sponsor of their programs and events for a long time. We do a lot to promote each other's messages, to make sure that we are promoting the same message. And I've been working with SGRA as well, another strategic partner in getting out clear, consistent message to our community. So any questions about our working relationship, township?
So what is your title?
So I'm water education and public outreach coordinator for water. So took over for Bob in August. And yep. So I work upstairs. Right now I'm 3/4 time. So I think we're getting a lot of good work done. And Hugh and I have been working, and Bob and Jim and others on the public education committee, subcommittee, ad hoc committee. We'll have some reports for you on that. Probably next month's trustee meeting on our progress there.
It sounds like one of the important community partnerships that we discussed, right?
Absolutely. That's
Very strategic.
True strategic partner.
Yeah. Great.
Good.
Looking forward to continuing a already strong relationship, making it stronger. Glad to have you here, Terry. Welcome anytime.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John. Okay, agenda item 11. Receive staff or ad hoc committee updates on the following. The Audit and Finance Committee, Ron Wilson.
We had no meetings this month. Next month, we deal with the annual audit and the merchant fees.
Yeah, we did have the meeting, but it was with the joint meeting with the River Authority, their financial group and their financial advisor about what Arthur was talking about. The River Authority goes through with issuing bonds for the critical infrastructure renewal that are multi-million-dollar bonds, what that impact that might have to our customers, and how do we best educate our customers about that.
Yeah.
So we had a kickoff meeting, but there'll be more to come.
Good. Thank you, Ron. Jim, the Public Education Committee, Hugh.
Yeah, I'm sitting in for Neil Gaynor this evening. We had the Public Education Committee met previously today. And really working off of the good work that John and his team have been doing, putting a strategic communications plan together. This plan is a draft in progress. We've probably gone 3-4 cycles through it. The idea is that there is a really very clear plan of first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and fourth quarter communication pieces that are kind of tied in with various events of the year that would be targeted for various different, and John, I'll let you speak up a little bit if you'd like to. All the different channels of communication that are used today, as well as some existing and maybe some new ones. The idea is to broad community education on not only the services of Woodlands Water Agency, but San Jacinto River Authority, conservation. Obviously, during the summer months, kind of a good idea to get out and talk about conservation, talk about the services, talk about the level of quality of our water, and look what kind of the future. Kind of whole idea of this is to get communications out there that are, 6 months to a year out to help community residents and our constituents know what's coming and what we're kind of working for, and really educate. And the survey results that we got was share and show that there's a lot of support, a lot of good kind of perspective on the water agencies, but not a lot of knowledge about what actually goes on. And so think of it that way. So we're making good progress. The idea is to kick it off in January, right, John? So we will have one more session probably offline, and then that document will be available probably right after the first of the year, if not, probably after the first of the year, I think. John, anything to?
I think you said well.
Okay. Jim?
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
There was a personnel committee meeting, a couple of them, but that will be covered under agenda item 12, which we're about to go into recess for closed session. So if we could, aside from attorney